I'd enter meetings and they'd go, "Oh, we're not used to women speaking up so much." Pardon?
A bit condescending.
It was so condescending being told in meetings, "Oh, good girl." Anyone that we'd spoken to had their story. Felt like there wasn't enough that was highlighting really strong women in business.
Natasha Marcello. Tasha's the co-founder of Four Keeps Merch. She's a podcaster of WIBS, the Women in Business podcast. She's had an incredible career and she's got some really great philosophy on life.
Being a woman in business and just some absolute horrible hurdles, challenges. Through my career journey, I realized that I was just waking up in cold sweats, I just felt like I just wasn't in the right place. I wasn't looking forward to going back to work at all. Felt like I was kind of living a lie almost. If I'm not happy right now with a champagne by the pool, when am I going to be happy?
What advice would you give you at the age of 20 with what you now have in your current state of knowledge?
It's a really good question. My biggest piece of advice was to...
So Tash, you are just full of energy. Full of good
Thank
vibes.
you.
I got that the first time I met you. I was in a room, there was lots of entrepreneurs there at the time, and I wasn't out to pass business cards or make connections or anything like that, but you just had like an aura, and I think we just ended up in a conversation anyway.
Likewise, I can say the same thing about you. All of a sudden we're just chatting and it's just like nonstop. We were just talking nonstop the first time we met. Yeah.
So have you always been like that?
Yeah, a lot of energy. I think it comes down to just being really open. And I think every single person that you speak to, they've got a story. And I'm just so curious about everybody. I just want to know everyone's story and I'm just so curious. So when I enter environments like that, yeah, I'm very open for a chat.
That's great. Well, look, I'm into the story part as well, from a curiosity point of view and sort of maybe it just helps me reference whether these are my people.
It's a good way, yeah.
So like with that in mind, with the story, how did you even get started in business in the first place?
Had a journey. Had a journey like everybody who's kind of, been in business for a bit. Everyone's got their own story. Fresh out of uni, I started my first job and that was a startup. Mm-hmm. Startup is the business that I was in for 8 years. So started there and it was a gifting business and started as customer service. It was myself and the owner and we were able to grow that business quite fast, which was really, really exciting. I was in a period where I was kind of just not sitting back, I was working, but I was able to see firsthand growth and business growth and how it grows. And from a really young age, seeing, risks, failures, mistakes, everything, and just learn firsthand, which was a really, really good opportunity. During that time when I worked at that gifting business, I started a business with my boss at the time and that was called Snacks with Bite. So Snacks with Bite is an office subscription service and we started that after a year of blood, sweat and tears. We got consultants from the US. There was a US business that did it really well, what we're looking to do. So we got consultants from there. We invested all our time, blood, sweat and tears, launched for about 2 months and then the pandemic hit.
Oh, wow. So this is a business, this is Snacks with Bite, right?
Yes, yeah.
And this is after you were already, I'm going to say wildly successful with Hampers with Bite.
They had grown quite significantly. So yeah, this was probably like 6 years into working for Hampers with Bite and they had grown quite significantly, yeah.
Yeah, so you've launched this business. It's about snacks. These are for corporate workplaces, is that right?
Yeah. So like fruit, milk delivery.
Yeah.
But snack delivery, so healthy snacks. So the concept was instead of reaching for that Mars bar or, you want sugar at 3 p.m, you want sugar, you need something to just keep you on. We really wanted to encourage people to aim for that healthy snack that isn't just fruit. It's not like to be healthy, you just have to have fruit. So we were really big on corporate culture. Also being in gifting, our main customer base was B2B. So we were consistently talking to B2B clients, consistently exposed to the problems in workplaces. And one of the biggest problems with a lot of workplaces is culture. So this was our way to kind of put two worlds together. The gifting business was incredibly seasonal. As you can imagine, especially for B2B. So this was to complement that business as well. And as I said, we built it, it was really exciting and launched and the pandemic hit. And unfortunately that meant that all the offices shut. Which was really hard. That was my first business that I was built and I was so proud. And then this happened and that was hard. Yeah.
So this is January 2020, 2 months before the pandemic, because a lot of us remember where we were.
Yes, exactly, exactly right.
Where were you at that moment when you found out that your business you've just launched, it's taking off and, you know, you're a marketing genius, you've been in this world, you're around workplaces, so you've got the solution and you've already got traction. Where were you at that time when you got that news?
I was nervous. I was in the office. So we were in the office. And at that time, for context, the gifting business had probably a workforce of, 10, 15 in the office and 20 in the warehouse, just as an example, just to give an idea of the business size. And I was general manager of that business whilst running this new business, Snacks with Bite. So to be honest, my first thing was, is everyone going to be okay? And that was my first thing. Then, you kind of hit that, well, am I going to be okay? Is this business going to be okay? It's scary. I can remember it was there and I sat with my business partner at the time and he said, look, we've got two options. Like we can pivot or hibernate the business. And for me, I don't know if it's like a pride thing or not, but like hibernation just wasn't an option for me. I was just like, cool, that's a cool idea. But I'll work day and night. Like I wasn't doing anything else outside of my job. I was like, oh, dude, like just let me give it a crack. Like just let me give it a crack. It won't be a distraction from day to day. Let me give this a real crack. And I think, when you go into those situations and you're put in that situation, you kind of go back to how you started the business. And how we started the business was, ask questions, find problems and find solutions. And that's what we did. So I called up customers, the very few customers that we had because we had just started. And I called them up and, I said, well, we originally came to you because we're solving a problem of corporate culture and healthier snacks in the office. That's a problem we were solving. What am I solving now? What's your problem now? And everyone I spoke to, not just clients, but people, and I'm sure you dealt with it, Bliss, everyone's dealt with this, was everyone was unmotivated, feeling underappreciated because you're working more, you're getting paid less. There was JobKeeper. Some people had to work 2 days but were, getting paid 2 days but working full time. Everyone was just feeling stressed, overwhelmed and stressed. And that was the biggest problem that we felt like we could solve. So because we had the ability to be quite agile with logistics due to the gifting business, we thought, okay, cool. Well, what can we do? Well, can we look at pivoting and start sending snack boxes to people's houses? So
that's the workplace now during COVID. Hey, at that time it was the only workplace.
Exactly right. So that's what we did. We started with a few clients. And then we just went, full speed ahead with the marketing for that. And we're able to grow the business quite fast during that period because of that pivot, which was really exciting and something that, unexpected, really, really unexpected.
I love these pivot stories. In particular, the creativity, like the short range strategy that's required to get ourselves from a place of almost helplessness and despair into a place where not so much we're going to be successful, but we're providing value. Yeah. And I was, I'm friends with a lot of people in hospitality, for example, particularly in Melbourne, some in Sydney and some in Newcastle where I resided for a long time. And I was in Melbourne when they started locking everything down because I'd been in Thailand prior on this charity ride, 500 Ks, 5 days for 6 kids. Wow. It was all very great and meaningful. We're coming to the last section where we get to go and see the kids in the home. Some of these kids have got HIV and they're still living great lives because of all the medicine that we can provide. Yeah. And it was just such a really holistic experience. And I'm hearing about these airports closing overseas. And I'm like, get me from Phuket back to wherever I can get in Australia. Yep. And it was only Phuket to Melbourne or Phuket to Brisbane. Luckily, I had luggage permanently in the QT hotel because I was 50, 70 nights a year there. I've been coming to Melbourne a long time. Yeah. And just to see the paradigm and experience the paradigm of people at hospo, because the lockdown of 14 days started after I arrived back, so I didn't have to isolate myself. It was the day I got back, they made the rule. I sort of did a courteous distancing, where it wasn't legally required. I got lots of advice on it. I stayed in this hotel and I only associate with the same group of people. It was 3 or 4 or 5 people, which still has a level of risk in it, obviously, but no one knew what was going on. Right. And then when I got back to Newcastle, I also isolated so that my kids could go to daycare without, me being the issue. But just seeing that, experiencing the paradigm of people in hospitality who so many of them live in the moment, right? And it's just like this thing that they've got a craft and they want to pursue it. And hospital in Melbourne is much like it's a career, you know, like people are proud of it. They come back into work in their lunch breaks and they watch their colleagues make food and drinks and they talk to them about it.
Yeah.
You don't see that in other parts of the world. But just to see and experience these people that just really, it was Armageddon for them. There was people taking shots and going, this is the last day I'll ever work. Yeah. Like, and as I moved around the different industries, it was just really, it was just quite gobsmacking to see like the different mindsets about like what's going to happen and the suffering that often us humans can put on top of what is the actual event. Mm-hmm. So like, tell me about what was your mindset like before you came up with this great pivot, like, but what was running through your mind when it all started happening? Your first business, 2 months in.
Yeah, terrified. I was terrified. I wasn't, I think it was just, it's overwhelming on all fronts. Whether you are in a business, we're in a business, exactly what you just said then, regardless of your industry, where you're at, everyone was scared and no one knew we hadn't experienced anything like this before. So you try and I read a book during that time, Good to Great. And I was just trying to educate myself on as many times other businesses have had to pivot during, times of hardship. But the reality of it is this hardship was like unexpected, like nothing we've ever seen before. So there was no basis of, what success looks like or roadmap to follow. And I like a roadmap. Like I like to know that, I like to kind of see and follow success. Success leaves clues. I'm a big believer in mentorship. And so for me, I was kind of like, oh, here we go. I think for us, what helped shift that terrified nature was the team, the people, the support networks that you have around you, whether it's, whether it was my husband or my business partner or my team, the people I got to work with, we were all kind of like we're all in this, like, let's just go. Like, all right, let's stay up to whatever time we need. Like, let's just get this done. It's not, we had this like mentality of just like shifted from terrified to like, all right, well, if we're going to go, let's go. Like, let's just go all in. And as a team, let's just make this work. And if it doesn't, well, we'll find out. Like, you find out if it's not going to work. But it wasn't an option at that point for us. We're like, let's just not even think that. That doesn't go through our minds. At this point, it's going to work. Let's just go. And I will say, we were lucky because of the industry we were in. I think you can talk a lot about good entrepreneurship and business people. And I'd love to be like, oh, yeah, I was just such a creative mastermind. But the reality of it is we were in an industry where, people needed that deliveries, like delivering goods, food and that kind of, and we were allowed to work during that time because of that nature, because of that, I guess you call it loophole now, but that's what it was.
Yeah.
We weren't like hospitality where we had to close.
Yes. Yeah, and you use the word luck there. I try and interchange the word luck for fortunate, just from the point of view that luck is something that's in my view, luck is something completely independent of anything that you've had a part in. Whereas I think fortunate is that whilst things were in your favour, you had put yourself in a position where things could be in your favour. Now, look, that could be so esoteric that it was done at a subconscious level. That like I can see from how you're into planning and the conversations we've had so far that you really like a roadmap and kind of rally people to here we're going.
Yeah.
Here's where we're going. Now you mentioned just before what helped you in that kind of almost rock bottom mindset of like, holy dooly, nosedive, what's going to happen? And you mentioned that like the team and maybe like customers were kind of like a driving force. So would you say that necessity, how much is that informing how you set your direction, like having
everything. So after that, not to skip ahead too much, but the gifting business was approached to get acquired by a publicly listed business, which was really exciting, really, really exciting. And so we merged the business together and they sold them. And I stayed on for a couple of years after that with new ownership, under new ownership, which was really hard, really difficult because, I've always, regardless of what capacity, I've always felt like I've had a lot of control over the situations, and especially running my business with Snacks with Bite, I had pretty much all the control. I was able to kind of do that on my own with help from my business partner, of course. But yeah, so then when we got acquired and, finally it was new ownership, and that was really, really difficult. And because I wasn't able to lead in the way that I wanted to lead, I found that really difficult. So I left, went and did my own thing for a bit, about a year and a half. I did consulting. Marketing consulting, and worked for other businesses. But to answer your question, I realized that for me, it just didn't fill my cup. It answered all the things I thought I wanted. So I had autonomy. I was making what I wanted to make. I was working with really cool businesses. I thought this was everything that I wanted, but I wasn't happy. I really, really, really wasn't happy. And it wasn't until I was approached about the opportunity for the business that I now own for Keeps merch that I felt like this big, like chugging an energy drink. And I was like, oh, I'm back. And, and I've been on board for this business now since last financial year, and you look at the last 6 months versus what I was doing previously to this, and I am just a completely different person in every way. And it's because I'm back where I belong, in the sense of I'm working with people. I get to develop people. I get to work with people. We all have a common goal and we work together for it. I'm not meant for sole trader shit. I'm not meant to be a sole trader. I like sharing it. I love it. I love celebrating the wins, but I don't like doing that alone. It's not fun. I like seeing everyone win, and I really love that. I really, really enjoy that. So yeah, to answer your question, I think through my career journey, I realized that in order for me to actually be really happy where I am, I have to have a component of people, in some way.
Okay. Like, someone to help develop, someone to sort of rally for that common goal you're talking about. So when you said that it was challenging for you, like after, and I don't want to gloss over this actually, that exit that you had in Hampers with Bite and Snacks with Bite, we're talking a public company acquiring a private company, and you'd been around for a while, but you were still on a trajectory. It's quite an honor to be approached, right, by a public company.
Yeah.
And then you hear stories about how they're approached, and then you talk to the founder and you're like, oh, that was just the most terrible experience ever. Some of them actually did exit to the company, some didn't, but yours has gone quite smoothly. And if it's not a big deal to talk about it on air, 28 million was the kind of
was the gifting
exit.
business. Yeah. Snacks with Bite was involved in that, but the bulk of it was for the gifting business, because they had been around for two brothers owned it, and they were my business partners for Snacks with Bite, and they had that business for would have been 18 years before sold. So they grew that. It was, it just to see it, when I started, it was a family business. By the time I left, it was still a family business, but because it was acquired, it did change, like what you kind of said. It was really beautiful to see a business like that grow from, a couple of people in an office to become quite a big thing, but the soul of it not leave. Then, you get acquired. And I think, as you said, when you've spoken to other founders, the acquisition can be really difficult. It can be really, really difficult because you're starting to have to answer to people.
How did you find that?
I find that really hard. I don't like being told to do it in any capacity. I found that really, really, really hard. I think culturally, culture is a big thing for me, and values is really big. And I believe at the end of the day, a lot of the people that I worked with within the business I hired, and I brought them through and I sold them the dream. Yeah. And I sold them the business, what it is and whatnot. And that's why I stayed on for as long as I did, because I needed to make sure that they were looked after and that they were okay before I left. And I don't know, I'm saying that I was the one that, did that, but I just, for me, I had to, even though I was miserable. I was miserable because I just didn't have control over anymore. It's different. You go from startup to corporate. I report to, one person, or then you're reporting to, you're doing AGMs, you're doing all these things that I'm just not used to. I'm not used to going into an AGM, reporting to a board, and that's what we had. That was expected of us, and fair play, you have to do that. But yeah, it just wasn't what I was used to. And the red tape and all the things that, what it's like. It's a different world to what, when your boss is your mate. Yeah. And very, very different. So yeah, I really struggled in it. But I stayed as long as I could, and, still wanted to make a really big impact with the business, make sure that everyone was really, well looked after and happy.
It sounds like you did that. Yeah. Even though it was a bit of a drain and you were sort of there, you're willing to be there, you're not wanting to be there.
Yeah.
So what was the catalyst of saying, I'm going to jump out of this situation now?
I was really unhappy. Okay. I was really unhappy. Yeah.
When did you notice? Was there what was running through you? Was there a moment?
Yeah, there was. I was on holiday. I had a little staycation and I couldn't sleep. I couldn't sleep. Now, I think sometimes not being able to sleep can be good and bad. Now I can't sleep because I'm at 3 a.m. in the morning. I got my notes app out and I'm like, oh my God, then we should do this. Then we should, my brain is racing, and not sleeping that, I'm not saying it's healthy, but it's I can deal with that. I can deal with that. It's okay. I was just waking up in cold sweats. I just felt like I just wasn't in the right place. I wasn't looking forward to going back to work at all. I just really didn't enjoy it. I think the main thing was the control, and I wasn't able to really grow and do all the things I wanted to do with the team and all these things that I was so excited about. I felt like I was kind of a dramatic thing to say, but almost like living a lie almost in that situation. I just felt like I wasn't living what I said I was going to do and all of that. So yeah, it got to me, and I can picture exactly where I was. I was at a beautiful hotel by the pool. Like, you'd expect that to be the time when you're the happiest. And I just looked at it and I just thought, if I'm not happy right now with a champagne by the pool, you know, not working, when am I going to be happy?
Yeah.
If I can't be happy now. And that's when I realized that financials are great and you need them. You absolutely need them. But I just realized I'm not driven by that as much as I thought I might be.
Yeah, look, I think that's a great realization to have, and then to actually have the courage to go and do something about it, which is like for you, developing the people and developing the team from what you've said is like a really core part of it, and sort of having the ability to shape something. And I resonate with that personally. I've been through multiple phases where I could have exited altogether, and like, again, approaches, big companies, you know, multidisciplinary, some international, residential real estate, business projects, property management, prop tech, like it's an ecosystem. It's perfect for them. And like, part of me is like, wow, I'm really kind of like honored that we're getting approached like this, and I'd love to see this go all the way. When I dug a couple of layers deeper, like, they want what we had, but they didn't want to keep doing it in why we were about it. And I kept coming back to myself, and I felt, well, my work's not done. Though I have also had very similar moments where I've been feeling like I'm just showing up for others, showing up and doing what's expected of me, and just feeling that kind of creative life force sapping out a little bit. Because like, at heart, and I think we've sort of alluded to this in our initial combo, that we're both creators in some way. Well, we all technically are, but like, if you're sort of visionary, if you're a creator, if you're used to putting things in and taking things through a gap together, it's very hard to do that when it's someone else's creation. And if you're not, you know, sort of letting that flow through you, and well, I know for me, I feel like that I'm actually robbing myself and others by not doing it. So well done on having the courage to make that change.
Yeah, it wasn't easy. Like, to your point, it wasn't easy. Like, I had at that point, like, you got mortgages, interest rates are going up. We were about to get married. You know, there's a lot a lot of financial pressure on that thing. And I just turned around one day and I was like, oh yeah, I've quit. My husband's like, pardon? And I was like, I'm doing it. And I made my decision, like, and a week later, I made my decision. I told the people I needed to tell. And then I left. It was a week turnaround because I just couldn't do it. If not a couple of days turnaround, I don't even think I waited a week. And it was just like, I've got to do this. I've just got to bite the bullet, rip the Band-Aid off. And then like, what do you do after? How do you make, I was like, you just got to trust, I guess.
Okay, so that's the catalyst of like, I'm doing this. But then what was the mindset that got you from, okay, I've done it now, to actually doing something?
Yeah, that was the hard part, because it was like, you know, we need to have incoming money. You know, you need to be making, start bringing in a wage and start bringing in ongoing wage or some sort of money now that the business is sold and now that you don't have a job.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was really worried. I thought then I was just like, oh, what am I good at? What am I not good at? What can I offer? I'd never been in service-based businesses before. I thought, because I liked people. I thought it made sense. Like marketing, I like people. Let's do consulting. Perfect. At that stage, I had a strong network of business owners that I had kind of built along my journey. So I tapped into those and I just said, you know, hey, I'm now going into the, you know, it's like that fake it till you make it, you know, like I'm a marketing consultant. And I hadn't even got the business yet. I think I like just got the ABN and I was like, yeah, I'm a marketing consultant now and I've been working around. You just kind of build up this story for yourself. By that stage, I had quite a bit of credibility because I had a few news articles and whatnot. So I kind of just used what I had available to me. I had some online credibility. I had sold a business. I had X amount of experience in online space. So yeah, I went out to my network and luckily got work through that. And and as I said, I did that for a couple of years and worked with a lot of incredible businesses. And it was really like, the clients were beautiful. I was blessed to work with the people I worked with. But again, I just didn't fill my cup.
Yeah, I think that seems to be coming through pretty strongly. So like you're helping, you're adding value.
Yeah.
But you're in someone else's journey. Like when you're a consultant, you're sort of like, how can I help you out with part of your journey? Like it's pretty rare that you would shape the entire journey as a consultant, unless you become like permanent advisory board or something like that, where you are actually guiding the whole board. But it's very rarely the case.
Exactly. And it's hard with consultancy as well, because you can give the most advice, but it's also dependent on the person and how much they're willing to execute on it. So, you know, I think for me, it also wasn't right with my values sometimes, because I'd be giving advice and they'd be paying me. But if they're not executing, then they're not going to get the results. So then I just feel like it's just air. Like at that point, like it just didn't feel right for me at that point. So I'm thinking, but you're not going to execute. We can keep this going. Like you're paying me, but it just didn't feel right for some circumstances. So there were bits like that. And I've quickly learned you have to be picky in service-based businesses. I think at the beginning I was like, I'll work with everybody. I realized that like a team and a culture within your workplace, you've got to be really selective with who you give your time to, regardless of whether it's a paying client or a employee or someone that you work with. I learned that really fast as well. You have to protect your space and who you speak to. And I had a lot of learnings through that year or so that I did it. And I think everything happens for a reason as well.
Well, it's brought us to this amazing place you're in now, like Four Keeps Merch. You've only been going for a little while. So
Promotions Warehouse was originally the business.
Yes.
That's been around for 18 years. However, the promotional merch industry, it's quite interesting, because now that I talk to people about branded merchandise, whenever I ask anyone like, branded merchandise, they're like, oh yeah, what's that? Or what's this? And I'm like, you've probably got it on. Like everyone's got a piece of branded merch with them at every stage. And I think, it is quite a dated industry. I think a lot of it is quite dated. It's a little bit uncool. When you think of branded merch, you're not necessarily thinking of like cool merch. You're thinking of like those dodgy branded pens that no one wants to use and they end up in landfill.
The stuff you get at a golf day in a show bag at the end that's just on your table.
Exactly. No one's really got a good connotation with, like, no one really thinks of branded merch as like something that's cool. They just think it goes into landfill, which is completely fair, right? So when I was given this opportunity, the brothers who sold the gifting business and I worked with at Snacks with Bite, they had Promotions Warehouse and they'd been running it for a while, and similar, they'd sold the business and they were hungry. They were hungry for, what's next, and so was I. I was kind of, in this weird place in my life where I was liking what I was doing but wasn't really, and then the opportunity came about where they're really just looking to change and just really make an impact in this industry. And I think for me, I was like, this is exciting. This is cool. This is, an industry where you can make an impact. Like if we can just change the mindsets of people who are ordering merch, where they actually order merch that they want to keep, and it's just something that you want to wear and it's not going to end up in the bin, and it's cool and it's well designed, and it's a representation of your brand that other people want to wear because it's actually just really, really cool and fun. And the idea and the concept of that for me was just so exciting. So I joined, I bought into the business, and first step was to rebrand it. So I was like, can we, I think the name warehouse can sometimes have, connotation of it being, I don't know, like fast. It kind of had that connotation of the dated promotional industry where things were cheap, quick and all that.
And so I imagine when I hear warehouse, like, bulky goods, forklifts, like just 100%. Mass orders that like, it's just a number, just how much can we get the per unit price down to? Exactly. Like I don't look at that like I want to go in and check out what they got and try some stuff on. If you can even get it out of one of these boxes, there's probably not even a showroom in a place like that.
It doesn't really like shout quality. Like it doesn't shout quality and sustainability, which is really two things that we're really passionate about. So it was it was the first thing as my role was to do a rebrand. So we rebranded to For Keeps. So it goes with our message of making merch that you actually want to keep.
Yeah, I love that.
Really important to us.
That's the For Keeps,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, really, really, really important to us because it's something that I think is missing. I think that it's important. It's incredibly important. It's a way to make an impact. I love merch myself. Like as soon as we did the rebrand, I made sure that we actually had really, really cool merch that, I've got friends that wear it proudly. But yeah, no, that was really, really important to us when it came to this business, for sure.
I'm wondering if you could test the real attachment to a brand if someone's willing to go all the way and get a tattoo of it.
I know. I've almost thought of it once, getting a tattoo of a QR code to the website.
Oh my God, that'd be so good. But then you got to keep the server active forever. Like imagine that, you're in the morgue and they're like, okay, time of death, whatever. And then they're like, I wonder if this QR code works. So it's like 404 not found. And you're like, you could have just paid the renewal fees beyond your funeral.
Just keep it going. Yeah. Yeah, no. So yeah, that was the reason behind it. And then I think I'm fortunate, not lucky, fortunate.
You don't have to
No,
use that,
I like it. I like where you went with that. I think fortunate's a really good way to do it. Where I'm incredibly fortunate is that I have the ability now to really focus on what's important to this business, which is the high quality, the marketing, the ensuring that we are sustainable and creative, really creative. I can focus on that because of the 18 years of work they've done.
Yeah.
So they have a team, they've got supplier relationships, which means that they can get the cheapest price. Like there's all of these existing parts of the business that make the business so good. The thing about this business, and with a lot of businesses in the promotional industry, is that they just weren't really focusing on marketing. So that's where I'm really excited, and this is why it's such an incredible opportunity, because it means that we can add that creative flow and what we spoke about earlier, that creativeness into an industry that I believe needs it, really needs it.
I really resonate with what you're saying there around like, you give the business what it needs, which happens to be what you need to be doing, so it feels like really on purpose. And, that's also part of you. You're a real, with being creative, most people that are creative are putting out way more stuff, creating way more stuff than is actually needed in their vocation.
Yeah.
So like an artist, for example, think about like how many bits of art they actually put up to be sold or whatever, but how many bits just end up on the floor or laying around their studio when it's art in itself. It's been created. And I know when I go to Blender Studios in Melbourne, that like is the hub for all the street artists, and like some name brands have come out of there. They run great tours and everything. When we go down there, I brought some other entrepreneurs from Sydney down when I was running a mini tour. And because street art's a big thing for me, right? I'm sort of from that hip hop culture background. And we go into Blender Studios and the artists are in residence. And I'm seeing these guys that have got art in their houses. I've been to some of these houses. We're talking $20 million houses. We're talking bits of art that are in the hundreds of thousands. And, everyone's got their interpretation of that art. But I remember seeing the eyes light up of this gentleman that knew that what was there was going to be great for his wife and kids. They just love this sort of art. And he's engaging with the artist. And I remember him saying, like this one here, I'd love it if you would sell me that. And he's like, I can sell you that. I had no intention of actually that ever making its way into someone's home or into a public place. That was really me building towards me finding my style. And he's like, well, that's why I like it, because it's like a work in progress. So he's creating, this artist was creating, and someone is getting something of that. And I suppose that's segueing to me, it just cotton in my mind. You're creating in a whole different way of contributing outside of your business with your podcast, The Wibs.
Yeah.
So tell me more about that. I love the concept, but I want to hear it from you.
Yeah, so it's the Women in Business podcast, The Wibs. It was kind of like a play on word of WAGs a little bit. So that's kind of how we did it. We actually built it a couple of years ago when we first got acquired. And the reason, kind of what I spoke about earlier, was I'd always been in that startup business. And I think because we were all young, kind of growing as the business was growing, I'd never really dealt with too much adversity about being a woman in business. I hadn't really experienced much of it. I think that just the nature of the business that I was in and the people that I was working with, it wasn't until I started to become a bit more part of that corporate world that I realised just how difficult it is, and how much adversity there is. And it just became a really, really big kind of look into, wow, this is an issue. This is a really, really big issue. And then as I started talking about it a little bit more and the podcast host that I do it with, Penny, we worked together for many years, and she'd experienced a lot of it as well. And we just started sharing stories. And I remember we were out one night and we were like, we're going to start a podcast. And we were out and, we would start talking to girls after a few drinks. They were all in their office gear, and we're talking like, where do you work and what are you doing? Have you ever experienced this? And just asking questions. And we realised that anyone that we'd spoken to had their story. Everyone had a story about being a woman in business and just absolute horrible, different, hurdles, challenges, everything that they had to experience. So for us, we thought this is really important. I think a lot of the time with podcasts, entrepreneurs, there's a lot about entrepreneurship and starting your own business. I think that's amazing. I think that's awesome. I consume so many podcasts on that myself. Like, I'm a huge consumer. But I felt like there wasn't enough that was highlighting really strong women in business. And I wanted to hear their stories. I want to talk to, the COO of a business that's grown. What do they had to go through, and what are the different things, and how did they create that with absolutely no guidance because they're part of a startup. So they're this person who's had to kind of do it all and, without formal education. And I want to talk to other women who are just, whether they own a business or not, how they got there, what have they done, how do they juggle motherhood with it as well. I'm not a mother yet, but I'm so intrigued by it. And I'm so intrigued by how these women are able to do, my day looks very differently because I don't have kids, and they've got to then juggle all these extra how, and all of these things that I've got. I'm quite inquisitive in that nature. And that's how we started the podcast, because one, we felt, a little bit of lack of control being in a new environment after being acquired. But two, we realised just how much these conversations were needed, because the more we spoke about it, then our DMs started going and we started getting women saying, thank you, I experienced this, or thank you for saying this, because maybe that wasn't okay that something happened, or little nuances that would happen in the workplace. Wait a minute, that's not okay. So we wanted to be the voices for, like, now I've got a voice. I've got a voice and I'm confident and I can hold my space and do that. But I wasn't like that at 20.
I was going to say that. So if it wasn't always like that, what were you like before?
Just easily intimidated, incredibly easily intimidated. I think a lot of things that we discuss are the things, look, to be honest, even later in my career when, I'd be given opportunities and I had one of the comments had made to me was like, oh yeah, I want you to do this because you're really bubbly. And I was like, okay, it's not because of my, 8 years of career or that I've now run this business for this long or whatnot, but it was because you're bubbly. I want you up there and I want you presenting this because you're bubbly. And I remember I'd enter meetings and I'd leave and they'd go, oh, we're not used to women speaking up so much.
Yeah.
And I was like, pardon?
It's like a bit condescending.
It was so condescending.
I've
been told in meetings, oh, good girl.
Oh,
good girl.
Yeah.
So
that's one step short of a pat on the head.
Oh, it's pretty much a pat. Yeah, it's a verbal pat on the head being told good girl in a meeting. So I think I had experienced all these things and I didn't reflect on them. And then I started experiencing them a lot more as I entered the corporate world. And I think it's a very different space. It's a very, very different space. And then I started talking about it and just all these, and the stories just kept going and kept going and kept going. And then I learned from other women that they were going through the same thing. So I wanted to have a podcast that if 20-year-old I were in that position where I'm getting called good girl in a meeting, I had the tools available to me to know how to respond in a way that wasn't emotional, that wasn't, just angry or upset, or they had a few tools available to them so that they were, had their armor when they go into situations like that.
I think that's incredible.
Yeah.
I've been a massive fan of recruiting senior women into senior roles in all of the company I've been involved in.
Yeah.
And a lot of inspiration I draw from my mother as well. She brought a startup to Australia that was part of an existing company in Europe, a little like you were talking about with how you've rebranded something and, 0 to 450 employees in 3.5 years. And, this is like a massive private company that's run like a public company.
Wow.
And I watched her dealing with international boards at night while she was, doing 12, 14-hour days during the day and just had this relentless drive to keep going. And I saw that. I had her as CEO in one of our companies for some time. And I also noticed, particularly in the sector I was in, and look, the people that were like this don't really work with me anymore or for us anymore. But there was particularly some male figures in our business at the time when she came in as, a consultant to do a bit of an audit on our back of house because we were killing it on the front of house. But I just knew that this wasn't running as smoothly as it needed to be back there, administrative and finance and corporate governance and HR. And I just wanted to make sure it was systemized, scalable, sustainable, and saleable, which has become my kind of mantra for a good business.
It's really good, yeah.
But it had to feel right. And the impact that Shula, my mother, made in there was incredible, yet the lack of respect shown, particularly from masculine salespeople who used to be, king of the roost for a long time, and the way that they would speak down and call Shula Mark's mum, like when she's CEO of the organisation, and I see that and I'm thinking this is a dignified woman that could walk into anywhere in the business circles that have known her and they'd be, without ego, praising the ground she walks on because of the value she's added in their lives and still does today, even though she's a consultant now, like business transformation consultant doing her own thing.
What an incredible woman. Oh my goodness. I'd love to meet her. She sounds amazing.
Yeah. Look,
she
I'd love
sounds
to introduce
absolutely
you.
incredible. But to your point, and she, I'm sure in her experience, she's had to work double as hard to get half the respect sometimes. And that's unfortunately the truth.
It just doesn't make sense though.
Yeah, it doesn't. And we're really big on it not being like a, women versus men. That's not at all. My business partner's male. Like I've always been around men in business and I've been blessed to be around incredible men in business and all my mentors have been men in business. Like I've been incredibly blessed by the people that I've been exposed to. But exactly like what you just described there, unfortunately, it's still happening.
Yeah.
No matter what you've done or haven't done, doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And this sometimes because you walk into a room and unfortunately you're just perceptions. What they take as reality, unfortunately.
Yeah, well, I feel that you're making substantial inroads to helping other people sort of head those things off at the pass. And like you said, the toolkit. So that's really valuable. Now, that's kind of like the world of business and how you operate. Like what lights your fire outside of the entrepreneurial business circles? What do you do?
It's a really good question. And it's funny because my husband's asked me this many a year. We've been together 10 years. And he's asked me this, like, what's your hobby? And I'm like, because it's just the worst answer. But I think for me, I'm working or socializing and that's it. Like I don't really have like that in between. I'm not sporty. Work, like when I say work, everyone's got different levels. Like I'm not saying replying to emails. Like I'm not saying when I say I'm working, I just love replying to emails. It's not that.
I love admin.
No, I love admin. Absolutely not. I mean, I love creating. So whether it's, I could spend hours on Canva, just leave me alone with Canva for hours and I could spend hours. I love creating. I really, really enjoy it. I can be stuck in a wormhole for hours. And then the other side is socializing. As I kind of mentioned earlier, and how we met is I love networking. I love talking to people. I love going out with friends and family. I love investing any time I have in just talking and speaking to people, conversations. That would be my hobby. I know it's not conventional, and I'd love to.
Well, there's no
tennis.
right or wrong answer.
I'd love to say like tennis or something really cool, like bike riding, and I'm really like sporty. But no, it is that. Yeah.
So that pursuit, like to have something like that as your, like, let's call it a hobby, that it's a pursuit, really. It's a passion pursuit because you're choosing with the time that you have that's not committed to a company or, a team or a customer, you're choosing to pursue that, right? And so what does it do to fill your cup, that process, that pursuit of like socializing and learning and being curious?
I think, and it's an interesting one because, and I know like what does drive you, what about it does drive you? I think I like the idea of creation and the creation and having an idea and then being able to really like put it into place and turning like this is just a random example, but like an idea that you have for a product and then being able to really like see it come to life through different measures. And AI has become a huge part of that.
Hasn't it? Oh,
so I think AI is just like added to that because it gives us now the ability to anything that we have in our brains create something visually through Mid-Journey and even just, any of the AI tools that you've got. That's another that you can just spend hours creating so much. And I think for me, I find that really, really exciting because it goes from a concept to something quite tangible. And that journey of concept to tangible, I'm a big executor. Like I love executing things. I'm probably a bit of a different visionary. I know a lot of times visionaries, they're very good at, understanding where the path is, but I really like kind of getting to the end of the path as well. And executing, that's definitely, I like to, kind of goes back to what we said earlier, the roadmap and making sure that I've got that end to it. I really like that. So creation to tangible, I think for me is really, really enjoyable. I really love it.
I get a lot out of that too. I feel like we're similar in that regard. Like, how you said leave me with Canva for hours. I'm like that with ChatGPT. Yeah. So I upgraded to not just 4.0, but the Pro version recently. So you can save projects. It's like $300 US a month instead of 25. And I'm like, I'm not just doing it to see what the Dira product gets. I'm doing it because I know that I'm pushing the limits of the 4.0. I have long conversations. I'm talking hours at a time where I'll do a 5-minute prompt and then I'll get something back and then I'll discern a little bit of it. And I'm seeing it come alive. And, there's a profiling tool called 6 Types of Working Genius. And because you're a big reader and listener, I'm going to share it with you, right?
Yeah, yes, please.
It's definitely a staple for me in business now because, think about Myers-Briggs and DISC and Reach and Contribution Compass and most of those, they are so valuable. And they are so nuanced that you need a consultant to explain it to you, which is valuable too because it can help you make sense of the written word. With 6 Types of Working Genius, it's kind of like you can listen to the audio or you can't, but you do the 15-minute test and at the end of it, it's pretty self-explanatory. So it goes wonder, invention, discernment, galvanizing, enablement, tenacity. So you think about the start of an idea, I wonder if we can have a computer on every desk in the world, think big.
Yeah.
But then the wonder is kind of useless without someone who can invent something to get it from a wonder to being in real life. And that's me, I'm the inventor. So invention, then wonder are mine. And discernment is kind of figure out, will this work? Like what parts of it won't work, what parts of it will work. So that's like almost a fault finding in advance. But you get 2 types of genius that give you energy. That you could do it for hours. Like you said, you're up at 3 a.m. I'm the same. It's either worrying about something human related or it's inventing something and I just can't turn it off. I've got to go with the flow. Then my biggest issue is I like to get up early in the morning, so I'm going to have to pay for that sleep debt.
Yeah.
But so wonder, invention, and then once you've discerned it, once you've sort of figured out if it's worthwhile, you've got to go and get everyone on board.
Yeah,
Which you've done that a few times. To see it come to life, you then need to hold the hands of the people that are going to be sort of doing the end part and the tenacity, seeing it right through to the end.
Yeah.
So I'd be curious where your 6 Types of Working Genius, where your 2 top ones are, because invention's got to be one of them.
I think all of these, I love it. I think all of these are really important as well because they, especially as entrepreneurs, you don't necessarily have somebody really kind of, I wouldn't say the word micromanaging, but really looking at you and your personality style and what you bring. And I remember we had a consultant come and do a disc profile to everyone in the business, and that was like a mirror to everyone's face without anyone having to tell them. And it was for me, and I'm sure this one will be exactly the same, where they kind of give you the tools of, hey, this is what you like. This could help you be a little bit better in this situation. So you're not as, dominant, in those situations, and maybe you need a little bit more influence, those kind of situations.
Is that what you are, DI?
DI, yeah. I had no S or C. They were just completely out the window. I had none of those.
You need those people.
I need them. My ops manager was all SC, and I was like, beautiful, we're a match made in heaven. And the person I started my podcast with, Penny, she was all I. So she is just the most beautiful, influential person ever. So I just said, lovely podcast, beautiful. She's
perfect.
She's incredible at it. We actually use that internally, and I use that now when it comes to bring anybody on the team, because I need to know kind of, are we going to be okay in this situation? Because it's kind of what I'm like. And if I come across as this, it's not me being rude. I'm not trying to be dominant. I'm just trying to, get everything done.
It's driving or direct, because Reach calls it driver. Whereas some of the others call it director or dominant. It's I'm so far down the bottom corner of D now, it's not funny, even though I'm naturally very social and bring people on the bus. Because when you look at the 6 types, it's what do you get energy from doing more of? And for me, I want to invent something that is going to get us all through a gap. And then I want people on board with me that can accurately discern and not be guiding in their own way. And that I want to see it get through to completion. But things like enablement and tenacity, whilst I can do it, and I've done it for a lot of my career, which is that final execution piece, by then it's already a system and it's just trying to get people to do what they've already known is better, but they have to do their part. And that part drains me because I feel bad saying, come on, because it feels like, come and do what I say. Whereas I'd rather invent it and have it so good that people would feel really like they are deliberately avoiding doing it because it's such an advantage.
That's a perspective of it. I feel like your one is more looking ahead. I love that. Yours is the other ones I've done in the past is kind of retrospective. This is what you are this is what you've done. This is your past behaviors. Whereas yours is really looking ahead. It's kind of this is what's going to continue to drive you should you go down that path.
I
love it.
Patrick Lencioni is the author on that. I want to credit because he's been a big help for me, particularly in the last couple of years as I've become more of a board member or R&D for my own companies, where there's definitely other people who are doing the fulfillment. that it's been really important to understand the dynamics of the team around us and how they all behave.
Yeah.
So with all of this that we've been talking about, this is a beautiful arc that you've had. And, like I see and I experience now with your aura and just, like the way that you can make sense of your own journey and what you're about. It's just really great. I love your outlet with the pod. So you mentioned before, like 20-year-olds in business, if you could kind of, give them, particularly females, that. But rather than an example of one of your listeners or viewers, but imagine it's you. What advice would you give you at the age of 20 with what you now have in your current state of knowledge?
It's an interesting one because I think I ask myself this quite often because that's the nature of the pod. And what would I tell myself? It does change. I think when I first thought of it, it was my biggest piece of advice was to back yourself. You're going to get a lot of opinions. You're going to get a lot of opinions, and there's going to be times where you're told you're not good enough or people are going to reject you. They're going to reject you. It's not personal. It's life. And just keep going. If you really have conviction in what you're doing and you stick to your purpose and your values, just go for it. Just go for it. Just go. That's big. The only caveat I'd have to that now because of my career is also on the other end, don't forget to ask for help when you need it. Because entrepreneurship doesn't have to be lonely. It is lonely. It is, but it doesn't have to be. And I think leaning on people, on building a network of people that you can lean on in times is really, really important because there are people who might not have the same journey as you, but I think even as us talking, you shared a lot about your journey and you can resonate with a lot of it. And I think that's really helpful. It's really, really helpful. So I would tell myself, because you look when you're 18, you kind of look ahead, you're like, I want to be that person. I want to do this and I want to do this. And you're so like full of energy. It'd be two found, which is back yourself, but also ask for help when you need it.
That's really valuable. That's so valuable. As you're saying that, it's almost like that voice of my own that I've got, the inner tribe of mentors. There's sort of part of your higher self in there, part of the people you take their opinion and they're like, yeah, that one. Because like the back yourself part, it seems like that the back yourself part is like I'm not going to say stereotypical because it's unreasonable, but there's a convention of entrepreneurialism that's just like, just go for it. Don't listen to anyone. Screw the haters, blah, 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 which is true. Like the fuck the haters comment, I think has like, I'm only just starting to properly get it because I've usually had envy or jealousy or competitor tactics to deal with in business, but that's mostly below the radar. Like it's not like the public's aware of it. Yeah. When you get public hate, whether it's on socials or some other form, some sort of thing that's happening where a mass of people are being shown a version of you that's different than your own and they've got a louder microphone, that can be crushing, particularly in a professional services setting where a big part of what you're bringing to people is like integrity or trust or, like a solution to their problem that genuinely echoes the care that you have for it working out. Yeah. And then when someone says something different, it can really crush. The thing that's missing there though, like with that, fuck the haters comment is that with back yourself, it's just yourself, right? Exactly. And like you said, it's either lonely at the top or lonely in business or lonely being an entrepreneur. And a lot of that is because of the choice entrepreneurs make to isolate themselves from opinions of people that say don't do it. But there's a difference, I believe, in people saying don't do it because they're just not at that level of awareness. And they're kind of risk mitigating on behalf of you or because they've never tried something themselves. But that's a different kind of ignorance to the people saying, consider a slightly different way because they're kind of discerning and looking out for you and they have no kind of personal gain other than it feels right for them to help you look at things another way with that help.
Completely right. You're completely right. And I think it's as entrepreneurs, because a lot of us maybe don't have that like that formal education, right? When it comes to the industry that we're in, a lot of entrepreneurs don't. It's kind of like, let's just go. And so you have to have an element of back yourself. But I think sometimes people mislook at vulnerability as weakness when I've learned it's complete opposite. The best business people I've met are vulnerable and are okay to say, hey, I didn't know that, and talk to me about that. And I think because you feel like you've got to like be this really strong business person, I know everything I'm talking about because we're learning as we go a lot of the time, and that imposter syndrome, and you're learning as you're going. I think backing yourself has to be kind of put in with that vulnerability. Otherwise, you are just by yourself in it. It's not as good.
No, I'm so with you on that, Tash. So what's next? As we wind up here, what's next for Tash?
For Keeps merch, it is my absolute baby. I'm obsessed. I am just so excited. I'm just so pumped. I'm really, really just can't wait for what the next year looks like. This year already, we didn't take a break over the holidays. It was work, but it wasn't work. It was awesome. I'm just so pumped. I'm really, really excited. So Keeps merch, continue with the pod, keep having incredible guests on, keep learning from people. That's what's next.
I love that. Well, based on what I've come to know about you, the journey you've been on, that this aura and this sort of strong direction you've got about how pumped you are, I have no doubt at all that it's going to be a really engaging and fruitful journey for you. And I believe there's a lot of people that are going to benefit from just hearing a little bit about the journey and those conversations you have on your Wibs podcast as well. So for Keeps merch and Wibs, keep an eye on these ones. Keep an eye on Tash. Thanks so much for coming on Flow Zone.
Thank you so much. Thank you.